Welcome to World Alert Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. In February 2022, headlines predicted Kyiv would fall in 72 hours. The world braced for a swift Russian victory. Russia's military might, tanks, jets, and a vast air force seemed overwhelming. The plan was a lightning strike, a special military operation meant to end before the world could react. On paper, Russia's air force dwarfed Ukraine's aging fleet. Analysts expected Ukraine's air power to be wiped out in hours. But the story didn't go as written. The three-day war stretched into weeks, then years. The skies over Ukraine became fiercely contested. Ukrainian pilots, flying old MiGs and Sukhois, refused to be grounded. They flew daring, low-altitude missions, defying the odds. Reports emerged of Russian planes shot down, not just by missiles but in dogfights. The quick, decisive victory never materialized. Ukraine's air force, expected to collapse, became a symbol of resilience. This wasn't just a Russian miscalculation, it marked a shift in modern warfare. Ukraine's survival was no fluke, it was grit, ingenuity, and a willingness to rewrite the rules. The David in this story found its slingshot, not in a single weapon but in a new way of fighting. Desperation bred innovation, and Ukraine's strategy would force the world's superpowers to rethink everything they knew about war. The skies over Ukraine became a proving ground for a new era of conflict. The world watched as the underdog rewrote the script. The three-day war that never was became a lesson in adaptation and resolve. After the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine inherited a massive arsenal, including hundreds of advanced jets. For a moment, Ukraine was the world's third-largest nuclear power with a formidable air force. But this gift came with a heavy price. Maintaining such a fleet was ruinously expensive, and Ukraine's economy was in crisis. The infrastructure and training were built for a superpower, not a struggling new nation. Planes were grounded, cannibalized for parts. The number of combat-ready jets plummeted. The real problem wasn't just hardware, it was mindset. Ukraine's air force was steeped in rigid Soviet doctrine, strict top-down control, little room for pilot initiative. Pilots were cogs, not independent thinkers. The system was built for massive, conventional wars, not the hybrid conflicts of the 21st century. By the 2010s, Ukraine's air force was a shadow of its former self, aging, underfunded, and inflexible. The once mighty fleet became more museum piece than fighting force. This decline left Ukraine dangerously exposed. The world barely noticed as a vulnerability grew at Europe's heart. In 2014, that weakness would be brutally exposed, forcing Ukraine to choose rebuild or face annihilation. The curse of its Soviet past had finally caught up. 2014 was a brutal awakening. Russia annexed Crimea in a swift, devastating operation. Ukraine lost not just territory but key military assets, aircraft, bases, and experienced personnel. The Air Force, already weakened, was gutted overnight. War erupted in the Donbas. Ukraine's remaining jets and helicopters tried to support ground troops, but Russian-backed separatists wielded advanced air defenses, manpads, and SAMs. Ukrainian aircraft were shot down in alarming numbers. The skies became a no-fly zone. Losses were unsustainable. The high command grounded the Air Force, a painful admission of obsolescence. The air war was over before it began. Artillery and tanks took over, but this collapse became a catalyst for change. The old Soviet way was dead. Ukraine couldn't match Russia plane for plane. Desperation sparked a search for new ideas, new partners, and a new philosophy. The lessons of Crimea and Donbas forced Ukraine to look west, not just for aid but for a new way to fight. Flexibility, decentralization, and innovation became the new watchwords. The seeds of transformation were planted in the ashes of defeat. After 2014, Ukraine began a quiet revolution, turning to the West for help. NATO trainers introduced a new mindset: empower junior officers, encourage initiative, and adapt on the fly. The rigid Soviet command structure was dismantled. Ukrainian pilots learned to fly unpredictably, using terrain and hit-and-run tactics. They became hunters, not just targets. Intelligence and operations were integrated for faster, more precise strikes. Real-time information flowed to pilots and ground units, enabling rapid action. The OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, became central. By 2022, Ukraine still flew Soviet jets but fought with a Western mindset. Russia expected a predictable opponent. Instead, it faced a dynamic, decentralized force. Adaptation triumphed over brute force. Ukraine's new playbook was written in adversity, and it worked. As Ukraine adapted, a new weapon emerged: the small, cheap FPV drone. Hobbyist drones, modified with explosives, became precision-guided munitions. Volunteers and engineers turned garages into drone factories. FPV drones gave infantry their own air force. Soldiers could fly a drone into a tank or bunker with pinpoint accuracy. The cost? A few $100s. Drones became the great equalizer, destroying million-dollar equipment for a fraction of the price. Swarms of drones overwhelmed Russian positions, creating chaos and fear. Their disposability allowed Ukraine to take risks and innovate rapidly. The FPV drone fit perfectly with Ukraine's decentralized command. Small units could act fast without waiting for orders. The pace of combat accelerated. Russia struggled to keep up. The drone wasn't just a tool, it was the embodiment of Ukraine's new way of war. What began as a grassroots drone movement soon became a national industry. The Army of Drones initiative mobilized private companies and volunteers to mass-produce UAVs. In 2023, Ukraine aimed to build 1 million FPV drones, an industrial feat amid war. Warehouses and factories churned out drones with improved range, payload, and resistance to jamming. The battlefield changed. Skies once ruled by jets now buzzed with thousands of drones. Saturation attacks wore down Russian defenses and morale. Beyond FPVs, Ukraine developed long-range UAVs to strike deep inside Russia, hitting airfields, refineries, and logistics hubs. Drones became a strategic weapon, not just a tactical tool. Ukraine's drone army was a symbol of resilience and adaptation. The future of warfare was being built in real time. Drones changed the low-altitude fight, but Ukraine needed to contest the higher skies. Western-supplied F-16S and Mirage 2000s were game-changers. Modern, versatile, and deadly. F-16S could fire advanced missiles like the AGM-88 HARM, hunting Russian air defense radars. For the first time, Ukraine could conduct effective SEAD, suppression of enemy air defenses missions. Specialized support aircraft like Sweden's Saab 340 AEW and C gave Ukraine a powerful eye in the sky. These planes detected threats at long range and relayed real-time data to pilots and air defense crews. The combination of advanced fighters and airborne surveillance created a potent network. Ukraine could now contest the skies, create safe corridors, and systematically degrade Russian air defenses. Air superiority wasn't achieved overnight, but the balance had shifted. The era of Russian dominance in the air was over. Ukraine's true breakthrough was combining drones and jets in coordinated attacks. Operations began with swarms of cheap drones, overwhelming Russian air defenses. Decoy missiles and drones forced Russian SAMs to reveal their positions. Once radars activated, Ukrainian F-16S fired HARM missiles, homing in on the signals. Simultaneously, cruise missiles targeted command posts and launchers. The timing was precise, a symphony of destruction. This strategy dismantled Russia's layered air defense designed for a handful of threats, not a cheap swarm followed by precision strikes. Drones absorbed the first volley, saving pilots and expensive missiles for the killing blow. Ukraine punched holes in Russia's air defense umbrella, opening new opportunities. It was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. Ukraine's success has become a global case study. Militaries worldwide are rethinking strategy, procurement, and the role of drones. The vulnerability of expensive assets to cheap swarms has forced a major reassessment. The US and China are racing to adapt, studying Ukraine's tactics and the fall of invincible air defenses. The arms market is shifting. Demand for drones and countermeasures is skyrocketing. Warfare is moving from big, expensive platforms to networked, decentralized battles. The new keywords: attritable, autonomous, agile. Ukraine proved that adaptation and speed matter more than sheer size or cost. The fastest learner wins. The drone revolution is here, and the nature of conflict has changed forever. Ukraine's fight is a blueprint for the future. In this new era, innovation is the ultimate weapon.